Shalom to all my brothers and sisters. As promised, I told you that I was going to make a more fuller video about the new moon and the biblical calendar and the reason for Karaites following the biblical calendar according to Torah and using the entire Tanakh as well. The ripening of the barley and the new year. The biblical year begins with the first new moon after the barley reaches the stage of its ripening, known in Hebrew as Aviv. The Torah refers to this as the month of the Aviv, which is the month in which our ancestors were freed from slavery in Egypt, and in which the Passover holiday falls out. You could find this in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, Exodus chapter 13, verse 4, Exodus chapter 23, verse 15. In some biblical years, the barley becomes Aviv after the 12th lunar month, while in other years it only happens after the 13th month, called a leap month. In the 4th century CE, the rabbis replaced direct examination of the crops in the land of Israel with a pre-calculated system designed to approximate the ripening of the barley. Now, this was not on purpose. This was because and due to Roman persecution, many deaths and killings, where it forbade them from being able to proclaim the new moons in Jerusalem. There were many problems that were put upon the rabbis. So this was not something that was done for no reason. There was harsh persecution and many deaths. So this new pre-calculated system uses a 19-year cycle, which arbitrarily sets every second or third year as a leap year, producing 7 leap years during every 19-year cycle. On the other hand, up until the 18th century, the Karaites of Egypt, Syria, and Israel sent observers throughout the land of Israel to examine the state of the barley. Karaites who lived in countries that were far from the land of Israel were unable to actually follow the Aviv. However, they still recognized it as the true calendar. When the occasional traveler from the Middle East passed through these distant Karaite communities, they would question him regarding the Aviv and adjust the holidays for that year accordingly to the biblical Torah commandment of following this decree. They also declare that as soon as their communities be blessed with returning to the land of Israel, they would immediately return to the following of the Aviv, or the ripening of the barley crops. In the 20th century, with the return of the Jewish people, Israel, to their land, this promise was finally fulfilled and the Aviv was restored. Up until at least the 2nd century CE, the Rabbinites, or Orthodox Jews, also followed the Aviv calendar as well. They did. Although the Rabbinites supplemented the observance of the barley with astronomical calculations of the equinox and other non-biblical factors due to harsh persecution. Again, I'm not claiming this was done in any manner that was not for legitimate reasons. There was fierce persecution and Roman persecution, and even the church against them. The use of which Karaites object to, their writings nevertheless they recognize, meaning the writings of the rabbis, they recognize that the barley has special significance for intercalculating the year. A Braita, a 2nd century CE rabbinical source quoted in the Babylonian Talmud, says as follows. This is in Sanhedrin 11b in the Babylonian Talmud. It says, our rabbis taught based on 3 things is the year intercalculated: on the Aviv, on the fruits of the trees, and on the equinox. Based on 2 of them, the year is intercalculated, but based on 1 of them alone, the year is not intercalculated. That's a very important point to remember. Another Breita, quoted in the Talmud relates, our rabbis taught the year is intercalculated based on the Aviv in 3 regions, Judea, Transjordan, and the Galilee. Based on 2 of them, the year is intercalculated, 2 of them. But based on 1 of them alone, the year is not intercalculated. And when Judea is 1 of them, everyone is pleased. Because the Omer, or the wave sheaf, offering can only come from Judea. Now this is from the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 11b. Thus, even the rabbinical sources recognize the importance of the ripening of the barley in determining the start of the new year. So, our hopes are that the rabbinical enactments will come back to the original form of following the Creator's calendar, that we may all be blessed all together as one, coming back to the way of our Creator, Yehovah, and following the calendar according to Torah, and that we pray and hope that will soon be accomplished in our time before Mashiach. Shalom, and thank you so much for your time.